All right, guys, Free to Choose, Chapter 4, Cradle to the Grave. This one is called Social Security. The major welfare state program in the United States on the federal level is Social Security. The major welfare state program in the United States on the federal level is called Social Security. Old age, survivors, disability, and health insurance. On the one hand, it has a sacred cow that no politician can question, as Barry Goldwater discovered in 1964. On the other hand, it is the target of complaints from all sides. Persons receiving payments complain that the sums are inadequate to maintain the standard of life that had been led to expect. Persons paying Social Security taxes complain that they are a heavy burden. Employers complain that the wedge introduced by the taxes between the cost of the employer of adding a worker to his payroll and the net gain to the worker of taking a job creates unemployment. Taxpayers complain that the unfunded obligations of the Social Security system total many trillions of dollars and that not even the present high taxes will keep it solvent for long, and all the complaints are justified. Social Security and unemployment insurance were enacted in 1930s to enable working people to provide for their own retirement and for temporary periods of unemployment rather than becoming objects of charity. Public assistance was introduced to aid persons in distress with the expectation that it would be phased out as employment improved and as Social Security took over the task. Both programs started small, both have grown like Topsy. Social Security has shown no sign of displacing public assistance. Both are at all-time highs in terms of both dollar expenditures and number of persons receiving payments. In 1978, payments under Social Security in 1978, payments under Social Security for retirement, disability, unemployment, hospital, and Medicare or Medi-Cal care, and to survivors totaled more than 130 billion and were made to more than 40 million recipients. Public assistance payments of more than 40 billion were made to more than 17 million recipients. To keep the discussion within manageable limits, we shall restrict this section to the major component of Social Security, old age and survivors' benefits, which accounted for nearly 2/3 of total expenditures and 3/4 of the recipients. The next section deals with public assistance programs. Social Security was enacted in the 1930s and has been promoted ever since through misleading labeling and deceptive advertising. A private enterprise that engaged in such labeling and advertising would doubtless be severely castigated by the Federal Trade Commission. He's calling out hypocrisy. Consider the following paragraph that appeared year after year until 1977 in millions of copies of an unsigned HEW booklet entitled Your Social Security. So, in quotes, the basic idea of Social Security is a simple one. During working years, their employers, and self-employed people pay Social Security contributions, which are pooled into special trust funds. When earnings stop or reduce because the worker retires, becomes disabled, or dies, monthly cash benefits are paid to replace part of the earnings the family has lost. This is Orwellian doublethink. Payroll taxes are labeled contributions, or as the party might have put it in the book 1984, compulsory is voluntary. Trust funds are conjured with as if they played an important role. In fact, they have long been extremely small. 32 billion for OAI, 32 billion for OASI as of June 1978, or less than half a year's outlays at the current rate, and consists only of promises by one branch of government to pay another branch. The present value of the old age pensions already promised to persons converted by Social Security, both those who have retired and those who have not, is in the trillions of dollars. That is the size of the trust fund that would be required to justify the words of the booklet. In Orwellian terms, little is much. The impression is given that a worker's benefits are financed by his contributions. The fact is that taxes collected from persons at work were used to pay benefits to persons who had retired or their dependents and survivors. No trust fund in any meaningful sense was being accumulated. I am you. Workers paying taxes today can derive no assurance from trust funds that will receive benefits when they retire. Any assurance derives solely from the willingness of future taxpayers to impose taxes on themselves, to pay for benefits that present taxpayers, or for that present taxpayers are promising themselves. This one-sided compact between the generations, foisted on generations that cannot give their consent, is a very different thing from a trust fund. It is more like a chain letter. The HEW booklets, including those currently being distributed, also say 9 out of 10 working people in the United States are earning protection for themselves and their families under the Social Security program. More doublethink. What 9 out of 10 working people are now doing is paying taxes to finance payments to persons who are not working. The individual worker is not earning protection for himself and his family in the sense in which a person who contributes to a private vested pension system can be said to be earning his own protection. He is only earning protection in the political sense of satisfying certain administrative requirements for qualifying for benefits. Persons who now receive payments get much more than the actual actuarial value of the taxes that they paid and that were paid on their behalf. Young persons who now pay Social Security taxes are being promised much less than the actuarial, or I don't know how to say that word, actuarial value of the taxes that they will pay and that will be paid on their behalf. Social Security is in no sense an insurance program in which individual payments purchase equivalent actuarial benefits. As even its strongest supporters admit, the relationship between individual contributions, that is, payroll taxes, and benefits received is extremely tenuous. Social Security is rather a combination of a particular tax and a particular program of transfer payments. The fascinating thing is that we have never met anyone, whatever his political persuasion, who would defend either the tax system by itself or the benefit system by itself. Had the two components been considered separately, neither would even have been adopted. Consider the tax, except for a recent minor modification, rebates under the Earned Income Credit. It is a flat rate on wages up to a maximum, a tax that is regressive, bearing most heavily on persons with low incomes. It is a tax on work, which discourages employers from hiring workers and discourages people from seeking work. Consider the benefit arrangement. Okay, let me. So sales tax. Sales tax is a regressive tax. It's a fixed tax. It means it's the same number for everybody. You got a progressive tax, usually income tax, right? The more money you make, the more taxes you pay. You fall into a different sort of tax bracket. That is a progressive tax. It's based off one's wage. So that tax based off the more you make, the more you pay, right? But he's saying this right here. Consider the tax, except for a recent minor modification, rebates under the Earned Income Credit. It is a flat rate on wages up to a maximum, a tax that is regressive, bearing most heavily on persons with low incomes. It is a tax on work, which discourages employers from hiring workers and discourages people from seeking work. Right. Consider the benefit arrangement. Payments are determined neither by the amount paid by the beneficiary nor by his financial status. They constitute neither a fair return for prior payments nor an effective way of helping the indigent, the poor person. There is a link between taxes paid and benefits received, but that is at best a fig leaf to give some semblance of credibility to calling the combination insurance, like a guarantee, insurance. The amount of money a person gets depends on all sorts of advantageous circumstances. If he happened to work in a covered industry, he gets a benefit. If he happened to work in a non-covered industry, he does not. If he worked in a covered industry for only a few quarters, he gets nothing, no matter how indigent he may be, no matter how impoverished he may be. A woman who has never worked but is the wife or widow of a man who qualifies for the maximum benefit gets precisely the same amount as a similarly situated woman who, in addition, qualifies for benefits on the basis of her own earnings. A person over 62 who decides to work and who earns more than a modest amount a year not only gets no benefits, but to add insult to injury, must pay additional taxes, supposedly to finance the benefits that are not being paid. and this list could be extended indefinitely. We find it hard to conceive of a greater triumph. We find it hard to receive of a greater triumph of imaginative packaging than the combination of an unacceptable tax and an unacceptable benefit program and social security program. Let me slow down, thinking about some other things. You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about how, like, blame it on capitalism, blame it on capitalism. Well, this guy is actually highlighting that it's the government, it's government policy that's really the effect. We find it hard to conceive of a greater triumph of imaginative packaging than the combination of an unacceptable tax and an unacceptable benefit program. And into a social, so we find it hard to conceive of a greater triumph. Like, we find it hard to believe that like the good in this thing, like the greater triumph of imaginative packaging than the combination of an unacceptable tax and an unacceptable benefit program into a social security program that is widely regarded as one of the greatest achievements of the New York deal. As we have gone through the literature on Social Security, we have been shocked at the arguments that have been used to defend the program. Individuals who would not lie to their children, their friends, or their colleagues, whom all of us would trust implicitly in the most important personal dealings, have propagated a false view of Social Security. Their intelligence and exposure to Their intelligence and exposure to contrary views make it hard to believe that they have done so unintentionally and innocently. Apparently, they have regarded themselves as an elite group within society that knows what is good for other people better than those people do for themselves. An elite that has a duty and a responsibility to persuade the voters to pass laws that will be good for them, even if they have to fool the voters in order to get them to do so. The long run financial problems of Social Security stem from one simple fact: the number of people receiving payments from the system has increased and will continue to increase faster than the number of workers on whose wages taxes can be levied to finance those payments. He said it's not fair. People who are working are paying for those who aren't. In 1950, 17 persons were employed for every person receiving benefits. By 1970, only 3. By early in the 21st century, if present trends continue, at most 2 will be. Interesting right here. In 1950, 17 persons were employed for every person receiving his benefits. By 1970, only 3 were working for every one person. As these remarks, as these remarks indicate, the Social Security program involves a transfer from the young to the old. To some extent, such a transfer has occurred throughout history, the young supporting their parents or other relatives in old age. Indeed, in many poor countries with high infant death rates, like India, the desire to assure oneself of progeny who can provide support in old age is a major reason for high birth rates and large families. The difference between Social Security and earlier arrangements is that the Social Security is compulsory and impersonal. You're being forced. Earlier arrangements were voluntary and personal. Moral responsibility is an individual matter, not a social matter. Children help their parents out of love or duty. They now contribute to the support of someone else's parent out of compulsion and fear. The earlier transfers strengthen the bonds of the family. The compulsory transfers weaken them. In addition to the transfer from young to old, Social Security also involves a transfer from the less well off to the better off. True, the benefit schedule is biased in favor of persons with lower wages, but this effect is much more than offset by another. Children from poor families tend to start work and start paying employment taxes at a relatively early age, children from higher income families at a much later age. At the other end of the life cycle, persons with lower incomes on the average have a shorter lifespan than persons with higher incomes. The net result is that the poor tend to pay tax rates. Uh, the net result is that the poor tend to pay taxes for more years and receive benefits for fewer years than the rich, all in the name of helping the poor. This perverse effect is reinforced by a number of other features of Social Security: the exemption of benefits from income tax, is more valuable. This perverse effect is reinforced by a number of other features of Social Security. The exemption of benefits from income tax is more valuable the higher the income of the recipient. The restriction on payments to persons 65 to 72 to become 70 in 1982 is biased solely on earnings during those years and not on other categories of income. $1 million of dividends does not disqualify anyone from receiving Social Security benefits. Wages or salary of more than 4,500 a year produce a loss of $1 of benefits for every $2 of earnings. All in all, Social Security is an excellent example of director's law in operation. Namely, public expenditures are made for the primary benefit of the middle class and financed with taxes which are borne in considerable part by the poor and rich. It's a pretty good argument right there. I like it. I like it because he's saying like we don't want government. The same government's supposed to be helping you. We just don't want you fucking with our families, and we want to be able to work. Plain and simple, man. The government's allowing this fucking food to be the way it is. It's not capitalist. Is government don't they have some sort of ethical approach to it? Like when you start working for the government, you got to give up. You can't have no conflict of interest. You be mad at the government. You shouldn't be mad at capitalists.